Turning now to the investigations surrounding former President Trump.
Yeah, his lawyers plan to ask a judge to appoint a neutral party to review and possibly return evidence collected during the FBI's search of his Mar-a-Lago home. Let's bring in CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Sganga. She's been following this story for us and joins us now. Nicole, what more can you tell us about this review that's happening?
Yeah, so former President Donald Trump is considering filing a court motion which would seek the appointment of what is called a special master. And that's basically just an independent lawyer who, if greenlit by the federal magistrate here, would review and return any evidence collected during the FBI's authorized search of his Mar-a-Lago estate earlier this month. But legal experts do say not so fast. There's sort of an important caveat here, and that's a special master really only comes into play when a party claims that evidence is seized is privileged. So while that's not uncommon, at this point, really the only two privileges that might be asserted here would be executive privilege or attorney-client privilege. On the first, former President Trump is no longer in office, and on the latter, it sort of remains to be seen if the FBI took any documents that include information subject to that legal doctrine.
So in the meantime, we're all waiting to find out whether or not the affidavit in some form or other will be unsealed. Just remind people about sort of where we stand with that.
Yeah, we're in a holding pattern until as late as Thursday. That's the deadline for the government to submit its redacted version of this key document that media organizations are really pushing to unseal, the probable cause affidavit that informed the federal judge's decision to sign that search warrant authorizing the FBI to go into Mr. Trump's Florida estate. Now, this morning, Judge Reinhart further explained his reasoning behind ordering the redacted version in his what's called the order on the motion to unseal. The judge explained the government has not yet met its burden of proving that the harm to the ongoing investigation that would come from releasing parts of this affidavit outweighs the public interest in this case. Now, when the government files its redacted version, it could have significant chunks of it missing. It could come back looking like Swiss cheese and leaving journalists and the American public sort of scratching our heads here. But ultimately, it'll be the judge who will approve it or go back to the drawing board.
So what more can you tell us about this ongoing legal battle over Senator Lindsey Graham's testimony before a Georgia grand jury investigating election interference?
Yeah, Vlad, an appeals court has put Senator Graham's scheduled testimony before that grand jury in Georgia on hold. It was supposed to take place on Tuesday. The 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals is giving Graham another shot at challenging this appearance. That's based on a privilege carved out for lawmakers under the U.S. Constitution. It's known as the Speech or Debate Clause, and that provision typically protects lawmakers from being compelled to testify about legislative activity. Now, we know this ongoing case in Georgia concerns efforts by Mr. Trump's associates to overturn his 2020 election defeat. Prosecutors believe testimony from Graham, who made at least 2 phone calls to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and his staff in the weeks following the November 2020 presidential election, could shed light on the issue, but it remains to be seen if he'll actually have his day in court here.
So we have, a series of investigations sort of swirling around the former president while he continues to sort of strongly hint that he's going to run for president again in 2024. He's made a lot of money, done a lot of fundraising. That's the politics of it all. But your focus is on security. And I'm wondering if any of these investigations could have an impact on his ability to run for president again.
Yeah, I mean, most certainly there are some implications should, the president be in legal hot water. Now, in terms of the politics here, it could accelerate the timing of a potential announcement to run for president. You pointed this out. Trump allies tell CBS News former President Trump is still debating about whether or not, his announcement might come before or after midterm elections. Either way, even if there is sort of the FBI search and ongoing investigation that puts him in this hot water legally, it also puts him in sort of familiar terrain politically, a place that both he and his supporters like to be, which is face-to-face with Washington institutions and a political establishment, as you point out. I mean, Mr. Trump, has alleged time and time again that sort of the establishment is out to get him. Now, some Trump allies remain concerned, though, that legal jeopardy could eventually catch up to the former president. But as you noted, for now, it's financial financially lucrative. Mr. Trump's political committee took in $1 million a day on 2 separate days following the FBI's authorized search of his Florida home. Again, though, it does remain to be seen whether or not the former president will ultimately be able to launch that run if he does, come under the scrutiny of the law. And as you mentioned, there are multiple overlapping investigations happening right now. We keep a spreadsheet here at CBS News. That's how complicated it's gotten.
I can imagine.
Yeah, for sure. Nicole, always great to have your reporting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.